Hey everyone, it's Shakira, aka the Dope Doula. Happy New Year. I am back with new content for you all today. We're just going to jump right in. Today we're talking about the 3 stages of labor and delivery and how to know that you are progressing through each stage. Media has portrayed labor and delivery as this one false swoop event that happens when someone's water breaks and then they go to the hospital and then a baby appears after excruciating pain and screaming and cursing at your partner. And that is so fabricated that it's laughable. Once you hear the way that it actually normally goes, you're going to look at pregnancy and labor and delivery portrayal in the media now as a complete farce and joke. So, labor happens in 3 stages, and those 3 stages are the early stage, the pushing stage, and after birth. The first stage of labor, that what is known as the early labor, has 3 phases to it, which I know is pretty confusing. And you'll know that you're in early labor when you are experiencing mild contractions. You will be about 6 centimeters dilated. Your cervix is going to begin thinning and opening, which is what's called dilation when you're dilated. And your contractions, while they are mild, they will be completely erratic. And so they'll be between 5 to 30 minutes apart, and the phase of each contraction will be wildly erratic as well. Some will last a minute, some will be a little bit shorter. The next part of the early labor, which is that active labor, is when your contractions start to become longer and stronger. And you'll know that you're in the active part of labor when your contractions become more consistent. So they'll be longer in the duration of a contraction, so about 40 to 60 seconds. And the time between each contraction will get closer, so about 3 to 5 minutes apart. And then your dilation will be between 6 to 8 centimeters. Once you get into active labor, that is when most people like to start to make their way or prepare to make their way to their birthing center. If you're someone who's laboring at home, doing your early labor at home, you will know that you are in that transitional phase, which goes from the active labor to the pushing stage, when then your contractions get more intense. They're going to last longer, they're going to be stronger, and then you're going to start to feel what's known as that barrel down experience, like that urge to push. That's that transitional phase. Once you hit the transitional phase, you should definitely be on your way to your hospital or your birthing center. At that point, you're going to be getting closer to that 10 centimeter dilation that birthing centers and hospitals need for you to be before the baby is beginning to make their way through the birth canal and crowning. The pushing phase of labor and delivery is one of the most instinctual if you are able to have a vaginal birth. And that's when you're actually doing the pushing in your labor process. If you want to learn more about breathing techniques, be sure to check out the video that I did featuring Ashley Green, where we walk through some breathing techniques to help you manage the discomfort and pain of labor and delivery. And then you have the last stage of your labor and delivery, which is your afterbirth. So after the baby is born, you're going to have to birth your placenta. And that can take up to 30 minutes post-birth of your baby. As a doula, I'm very much in the mind frame of doing what's known as expectant management of the placenta, which is allowing the placenta to be discharged without manual manipulation. So allowing the body to do what it needs to do to extract the placenta. there are in some instances where there has to be active management of the placenta to get it to discharge. And so those are the three stages of labor and delivery. There is a ton of additional cues that you can look for as you transition through each stage. One of the biggest when you're in that active transitional phase is the loss of the mucus plug. For some people, the mucus plug is lost all at once, and it's essentially, it looks like cartilage or like a clunk of glue. Once you lose that, then that's a good indication. And then you'll also have what's known as the bloody show, which is a terrible name, but it's essentially discharge with a little bit of blood mixed in that's coming from the loss of membrane and mucus from your cervix and uterus. Once you see that happen, then you know for sure that you are in that transitional phase of labor. Now, I know a lot of people are probably thinking, what about your water breaking? Only a very small percentage of expectant birthers actually have their water break before delivery. That's another misportrayal in the media. It's like you see someone's water break and then they're in labor. Water breaking doesn't always happen before the delivery of the baby, or even while you're in those three stages of labor. For a lot of people, the water breaks and erupts while the baby is moving their way through the birth canal, which is actually what happens a majority of the time. So water breaking is not an indicator that we're looking for. The biggest indicators that you want to look for as you go through those three stages: in early labor, you want to be tracking your contractions to notice whether or not there is a pattern of them getting longer in duration, stronger in intensity, and that the duration between each contraction gets shorter. Once you start to see that happen and that there's a pattern of that happening at least for an hour, then you know that you're in active labor. Then once you're in active labor, if you lose your mucus plug, if you start to see that bloody show, then you know that you're in transitional labor. Once you're in transitional labor, which is the shortest phase of them all, you're gonna move quickly into the pushing phase, which lasts not long for some people, could last a little bit longer. And then you're gonna go through the experience of birthing your baby and then also birthing your placenta. One final thing I want to say about going through the different stages of labor and delivery is that early labor looks different for everybody. Some people early labor for a few hours. Some people early labor for a few days. And it also depends on whether or not it's your first pregnancy or you've had multiple children. Usually the more children that you have, your early labor gets shorter and shorter, which is why some people, once they go into labor, they notice they go from early to active to transitional very quickly. But if you're in your first pregnancy, if it's your first time giving birth, you can expect that early labor is going to take quite some time before you can get into active labor. So that is the three stages of labor and delivery. I'll be back with some follow-up videos on IG stories, just talking about, how to really manage the pain through labor and delivery, some tips for how to encourage your birth team to support you in your birthing plan as you go through each stage of labor, and some recommendations for how to really optimize the golden hour or 2 hours after your baby is born. So I will talk to you all next time, and stay healthy, stay safe. Ciao.